Get the fastest internet available in North Central Washington by switching to LocalTel and get speeds up to 1,000 meg. Call 888-8888 today or go online to localtel.net.
Welcome to another episode of Let's Learn. I'm Eric Granstrom, your host, and on this show, we try to learn about different things. And on this particular series, we're having a conversation that no one seems to want to have, but it's coming for us all: death. Death and time, and about planning ahead. And for that, we've turned to some folks who help people make those determinations and help them make that step. And joining us today, we have from Confluence Health, Ginny Heinitz, RN, BSN, CHPN. I want to get all the alphabets out there, Ginny. Ginny is the outpatient palliative care coordinator and palliative care with people with a serious illness, basically. That's kind of the broad topic, is that correct?
Correct.
Let's first get to know you a little bit. So how long have you been with Confluence Health?
33 years as of June.
Wow, congratulations.
Thank you.
Is retirement coming?
Retirement is in my horizon.
Oh, okay. All right. Well,
Yeah,
good for you.
right.
Congratulations. Why palliative care? You were in hospice care before that for a long time, correct?
I was in hospice, and a lot of folks think of the two as similar.
Mm-hmm.
But for 25 years, I've seen hospice evolve where folks are coming to us later and later in their disease process. Sometimes I'd see a patient maybe for 2 to 3 days, maybe a week on hospice if they came out of the hospital. And to me, that isn't as hospice as one would think about and what people are hoping for, of time with their family, talk the stories, do the things you want to do, be pain and symptom management free as possible. To me, if you're coming to me in 2 days to a week, that's kind of crisis intervention. Mm-hmm. And not a lot of time to really spend time with your family and friends, which I think is the most important piece of the end of our life.
We had Dr. McCormick in to talk about this a little bit, and the hardest thing that I imagine for physicians is because that question of how long do I have?
Right.
And then determining that, and then I imagine that probably plays a little bit into their coming to you in the last week, because I think until then, isn't there a level of, okay, I've got longer than this, or the loved one saying, well, Uncle John has longer than this?
You know, there's so many different variety things that play into that story. Years ago, before we had hospitals, people died in their home, and grandma and grandpa or anybody slowly declined over time and died peacefully in the parlor, you know, with family around and hot dishes coming and storytelling happening. But now, because of hospitals and what we can do in healthcare now, we can extend a life. I sometimes wonder if we extend living as we define it.
Interesting.
And in 1990, there was a SelfDetermination Act that allowed patients to make their decision of when to stop treatment or go on to treatment, or should they be resuscitated or not resuscitated.
Now, was this in Washington? Was this nationwide?
That was nationwide.
Oh, okay. All right.
So in some respects, it's our job as healthcare providers to give you the buffet table of what you may or may not elect to do. I sometimes wonder if you understand it all, and do we spend the time to really break it down? So now we have folks who are quite ill choosing to go forth in treatment modalities that may or may not be helpful to match what they're hoping for of living well.
So talking quality of life, not just life.
Quality of life. I spend a lot of time with patients asking them what they enjoy doing in their life, what brings joy in their life. Who are you as a person? So that your story, the expert of you, is matched to what we may or may not be able to provide for you to match those important aspects of your life. If we go blindly and treat, say, a person with pancreatic cancer or end-stage lung disease, and we look at medical record number 1257632 and don't spend the time to know that this person likes to go fishing or this person likes to have a grandchild on their lap, can what we provide allow you to go fishing or allow you to read to a granddaughter?
Sure.
Or yesterday somebody wants to get back to dancing at the senior center. Can the chemotherapy with stage 4 metastatic disease get her back to dancing? We don't know.
And that's got to be the challenge too for the person with the disease or with the illness, to make a decision that they want versus what their family is telling them they want out of them. Come on, you got to fight this. You got to
Right.
fight this.
I preface it then, what are we fighting for?
Right.
We all want to fight for something. And it's important for us in healthcare to know what we are fighting for. Even if it's full treatment, that may or may not make sense to us in healthcare. If the patient and the family members understand the complexities of those treatments that they're signing up for, we are all for them. But there's a dance,
Right.
a little bit of, do they completely understand? Do we have time to explain it to them? When you think of the end of your life, it's important to plan for it way before you get to the end of your life.
And that's why we're having this
Right.
discussion on Let's Learn.
Right.
There's so much that I want to get into, and I hope we have time to get into it on this particular show. In reference, we had folks that talked about inpatient palliative care. You are specifically outpatient. So what does that mean?
It's similar philosophies, where you are working with seriously, maybe chronically ill patients who may or may not have a life expectancy of, say, less than 2 to 5 years. Although I hate to put any contingency on palliative care, because I think we all like a little palliative care along our life, because it means to provide an extra layer of support. One of the reasons I left hospice is because I was seeing hospice change where it was kind of hurry up offense. So then I thought, well, maybe I'll go to inpatient and do education and such. Well, in inpatient, it is really hurry up offense. And people are so sick that it's their family members oftentimes trying to assimilate what a patient may or may not want given the situation they're in. But the patient's voice of who they are and what they value and their spirituality of what means meaning in their life is not heard as often. So I thought, well, let's get it further upstream. Let's bring those same concepts of what's important to you and who's your support person and what's your understanding of your illness and what are you hoping for if time was short or time was longer. You could actually have a really meaningful conversation when people are not in crisis. Now, sometimes I wonder if I need to get out of the bricks and mortar of healthcare and how do we want to intentionally live any time in our life?
Right.
Because at any time, life might be shorter
This
than
is
we
true.
think.
This is true. Today is never a guarantee.
Right.
We need to take a break. So we're going to come back and talk more with Ginny Heinitz, Outpatient Coordinator for Palliative Care, here with Confluence Health on Let's Learn on the NCW Life Channel. We'll be right back.
For all the latest news in North Central Washington, go to ncwlife.com or find us on Facebook. Got a news tip? Email us at news@ncwlife.com or call 888-2020.
Welcome back to Let's Learn here on the NCW Life Channel. The topic is Death and Dying, a Conversation. And now we're talking about making choices for yourself and I guess helping to make choices for the loved ones in your life. When it comes to the end and not being in the hospital, Ginny Heinitz is joining us here with the Outpatient Palliative Care Coordinator for Confluence Health. So kind of walk us through that process. I know we said before we went to the break that you want to take the time, kind of that holistic approach to get to know the patient and get to know their story. A lot of times you don't have a lot of time, especially that's probably a frustration factor for you, is that, okay, you gave me a week or you gave me a few days. How do you do that, and what kind of questions do you ask of them? I mean, we talked about what you like to do and what your loves are in your
Right.
life. How do you do that in such a cramped amount of time?
You hate to say it's a procedure that I do, but I think we all do better if we kind of have a list in order to, at the end of the day, know that we've accomplished something. And so I really do use about 5 to 7 questions. It's not, I have to ask this question, then go on to the next one. It depends on how the patient or family is receiving, but I actually kind of start out fairly social and then kind of go into what's your understanding of your illness, what are some of your biggest worries and concerns, are there symptoms getting in your way of living the best that you can, what brings joy to your life, who's your support people, and where do you draw your strength from? And do you have questions or concerns that you want me to draw forth to the medical team, which I don't know about you, Eric, but it's quite a maze. I sometimes call it the ology of healthcare. It's not uncommon for somebody in cancer to see maybe a neurologist, a radiation oncologist, the oncologist, and their primary doctor. Then they go into the hospital, they have a hospitalist. So I spend a lot of time then, once they may or may not understand their illness. We have a very complicated foreign land called healthcare with very complicated words. So if I can break that down to them and then do some anticipatory guidance on how to communicate with people in healthcare to make sure their story, their concerns are passed on. And I'm fairly emphatic, you might say, to make sure that you have a physician you can dialogue with. And it's okay to stop the physician and say, gosh, I don't understand.
Right.
It's okay that even though the physician presents you with this buffet table of treatment, that you say, I understand you want me to start treatment or start something today. I need to come back and talk to my family members. I like to tell the patient that they are the expert of them. And we really need to understand their expertise so that we can share their expertise so that you can have the best possible care.
Right.
Whether it's fully aggressive treatment or comfort-focused treatment.
Well, there's the element where you hopefully have a support structure around you, family. What about those that don't? I'm just thinking of all those doctors, and you got to get to all those places, and
Right.
the outpatient part of it is that you're still getting out and you're doing the things that you need to do on treatment and everything else. That's got to be a challenge.
It's a maze. You see a variety of different folks with different needs. You have somebody that yesterday was a lady, 91 years old, very vivacious gal, drove from Kashmir, so very independent, but no children, no husband anymore, fortunately has a faith community, but worried about being a burden to that faith community. So then kind of processing through with her what's available in the community and educating her on different variety of folks in the community that help with elder care or folks who are seriously ill. Then you have sometimes family dynamics as well. We have a social worker in the outpatient that helps quite a bit, and then also in the community settings. I utilize home health services a lot, which is usually paid by insurance based on certain criteria. So sometimes I feel like I'm the concierge service of serious chronic illness, and it's my job to kind of educate not only on the physical being, but the emotional, spiritual, and probably more than anything, the practical.
Right.
How do you do this? What kind of things do I really need to know if the physician says you might have you have a serious illness, might be 2 to 5 years? What do you have to get in order? And some of those are, who's going to take care of me? All of us start very dependent. Most of us end very dependent. So, I mean, basic things, turning, cleaning, bathing. Who's going to do that in the last couple years of your life? How is it paid for? And if you don't have the funds, well, then what? So that's a must, kind of anticipating. If you really want to stay out of the hospital, which 80% of us want to, and yet 80% of us don't in the last 6 months to a year of our life. Well, you can't stay in the hospital indefinitely. It's not the place to go and die.
Right.
It's a place for the skill of a physician. So then, if it doesn't require the skilled physician, then you go on to nursing homes or assisted living or back home with your family with hospice support. But you need hospice support. You do need somebody to take care of you too.
Right.
And then about your wills, both advanced directives, living wills, and the financial will. About your funeral, about the burial plot or not a burial plot. Life insurance versus insurance that you may have paid for long-term life insurance. How do you qualify for that? All those things that you might have signed up for when you were 40, 50, and it all looks good, and where the heck are the papers? How do we put those papers in a practical approach in this time in our life?
That's a lot. And that's why we're having this conversation, so you can start thinking about it now and having those conversations now. We're going to take another break and come back and talk about the choices that you have at your disposal with Ginny Heinitz here from Confluence Health as we continue our series on death and dying on the NCW Life channel. We'll be right back.
Stay up to date with what's happening in North Central Washington. Go to the NCW Life community calendar at ncwlife.com.
Welcome back to Let's Learn here on the NCW Life channel with Ginny Heinitz from Confluence Health, who is their outpatient palliative care coordinator, and talking about the choices we have. During the commercial break, you brought up something very important that I think that we should talk about from your perspective on the terminology, and we've called this show Death and Dying, but you'd like to change that, or at least as far as the terminology is concerned.
I suppose it's always been death and dying, and then it's verboten to talk about then.
Right.
And we don't really like to talk that I think we know that we're going to die sometime. And when that happens, George Burns says, it's okay. I just don't want to be there when it happens. But I really like to dialogue with people about how you want to live. And we are who we are until our last breath. And we still are living to that final moment. And we are who we are, and I think we become more of who we are if we dialogue about what brings meaning to our life, what do we enjoy doing, what do we want to share with others. Then when that time comes, and after it's done, then your hope might be that the family members and the friends will go, boy, that person lived to their final hour. You will leave a legacy because you spend that very intimate time. In some ways, birth and dying is very similar. It's a very intimate time. And it's kind of raw and messy, both of them.
Right, yes.
But if you don't talk about it, well, it's still going to happen either way,
Right.
both of them.
Right.
Birth used to be, the mom used to go somewhere, be anesthetized, flat on their back for 2 weeks, and the father and the children were never to be enter into the process.
Right.
Now the whole family and extended family comes. And the same way with death, whether it's in the hospital or whether it's at your home, if you do this planning, oftentimes the family comes around, there's less anxiety, there could be less physical pain. Sometimes when I see pain that's really existential and doesn't really match with the physical reason, then I wonder what hasn't been talked about, what hasn't been done, what haven't we done to educate them? What haven't they done to get ready? And I've seen a lot of angst at the bedside. The wills haven't been done. Who's going to take care of mom? All those things. But all of us want to live. We come out wanting to live. It's a natural thing. Keep fighting for that, but really try to reflect about, again, what brings joy and meaning in your life. And then at the end of your life, you will have done well.
Yeah. I think the last thing, this conversation, the last thing I want someone to think about when I'm no longer here is how I died. I would rather have them think about how I lived.
Right.
So that's a very important, I guess, twist on that. And I love talking and having these conversations in this process. I've learned so much just in the time and the perspective that you folks have that I think is healthy for us all to adopt in this conversation.
When you think there's a great research, patients come to us wanting to know the research outcomes of cancer treatments or heart issues. The research project I like is, what do patients want towards the end of their life? They want to be independent. They want their symptoms well managed. They want time with their family. They want to have time to maybe do some forgiveness or leave some legacy work. And if we don't take the time to kind of process through those questions, I'm afraid you won't have the time. Right. And that's where I think the angst comes.
There's a topic we're going to not get into a lot here, but I wanted to ask you, because it's part of the options here in Washington State, is death with dignity. I don't know what the rates are here in Chelan, Douglas County, or North Central Washington, but that is a legal option here in the state, correct?
Correct.
Okay, so how do you approach that conversation with folks? I hope they bring it to you first.
So far, the people bring it to us more so than anything, and we refer them to information that's on the website, End of Life Washington. Pros and cons, I'm sure your listeners are curious about. What I enjoy about those folks is that they are open to any part of the conversation. It's not a verboten topic. And those that are seeking oftentimes choose not to take the medicine. They may have the medicine, but they don't take it. And then there are others that do. But they usually have processed through with their physicians and their families and have done a lot of the legacy work, leaving memoirs and all. Whether or not you agree or not, but there is something to be learned from those folks that take the time to make plans, live life to the last hour, and then their families have that to reflect upon for years and years, which decreases the complicated grief.
Absolutely. And that's why we're trying to nudge this conversation into the forefront. Well, it doesn't have to be something that you talk about every day, but at least have it.
Right.
At least have the conversation on what do you want the end of your life and your living to look like.
There you go.
Okay, I like that. I like that. How do we contact you to find out more about outpatient palliative care?
You can
through St. Wash Hospital?
contact me through Confluence Health, my 630-4042, which is the same number as inpatient palliative care. If you're struggling with serious chronic illness, whether you're in the hospital, whether you're outpatient, I strongly suggest to have a team of people that really honor your choices.
Thank you for the work you do.
Thank you.
And for taking the time to join us. It's Let's Learn here on the NCW Life channel. Again, for more information, you can go to our website at ncwlife.com.
Is your vehicle in need of a quick oil change or tune-up before hitting the road this summer? Stop by Quick Lube and Tune, the home of the good guys at 610 South Wenatchee Avenue.